Hello, welcome to another After Office Hours on July 25th. Adam just did his office hours about Burning Wheel, which was very cool, and some people wanted to do some more Q&A with me, so here we are once again. Sit tight for a moment, as usual, while I get everybody on board with the various links and whatnot, so people can ask the Q's and get my A's. Uno momento. Hopefully it's not too loud. It's hot here in Seattle, right? Hot for Seattle. Haha. We don't have air conditioning as a rule here, so I have my fans going and windows open, and there's construction and stuff. So if that's super loud, let me know. You can ask questions on Twitch, on Adam's channel, or you can use the Q&A thing. I think the Q&A thing only works through Hangouts. So on YouTube, if you have the YouTube link, I don't think it appears there. I'm not totally sure about that. Let me check the YouTube link and see what it does. I think there's just comments. So I think the comments are live. I don't know. What if I hit this button? I don't know what that button does. Yeah, I don't know. Questions on Twitch is fine. Or in comments, whatever. If there isn't a question right away, I'll just talk about a topic that is interesting to me. So it's fine if you don't have any questions right off the bat. It's okay. So one of the questions that Adam got today was about, well, I think he answered this in a few different ways, but it was about starting a campaign and, oh wait, we actually have a question. I'll talk about starting a campaign in a second. Fangwarn, during the last episode of the Bloodletters Gang, that's our Blades in the Dark series, the group was discussing some sort of plans, and you kind of shut them down, saying that the outcome of a plan is not dependent on their pre-assessment at that point. Do you think this sort of "it will only depend on the execution of it" contradicts the fiction first style? It usually messes up my players' enthusiasm, and it seemed to me that you guys also stumbled a bit at that point. Thanks. Yes, this is a great question. So, yeah, the thing that happens, one of the things Blades addresses is the super problematic nature of planning and executing plans in a role-playing game. It has always been a horrible quagmire all through gaming's history, and typically the solutions have just been to actually sit and plan and basically have like some sort of board meeting instead of playing a role-playing game. So some people really enjoy it, and for those people, there is every other RPG ever written. So have at it. Plan all you want and have fun and whatever. It's fine. I've had plenty of fun sessions where we planned stuff. We had an assassination in a Stars Without Number game that was 2 entire sessions, like 2 4-hour or longer sessions involving reconnaissance and planning and like test cases and all this crazy shit. And it was really fun in that, you know, in quotes, fun. Like whenever we talk about it after the fact, everyone kind of rolls their eyes about, oh man, then remember when we did the assassination in Stars Without Number? At the time, everyone was really engaged, but you know, we do a lot of things in game design to make the process of play punchier or more genre focused or more interesting or whatever. There's all kinds of ways that we step away from simulation when we're designing a game, and in a fruitful way. Like if you want simulation as a goal, then you want to keep these things. You don't want to gloss over them. You don't want to mechanize them necessarily, because the simulation adds to the experience. Like Jason Morningstar's pseudo LARP Maroons, where the crew of the spaceship has to actually do the like landing checklist in this really boring manual, and like there's a physical representation of the cockpit dials, and you have to go through and like check them all off on the tabs and to make sure your landing procedures are correct. And it's super boring, except it isn't. It's because you're landing a spaceship and it's like supposed to be this like procedural thing. You could make a pilot roll to land the ship instead, right? So where in your game design, where do you draw the line between simulation and mechanics and yada yada yada? And a lot of games, when it comes to planning, have just said, well, you just simulate it. Like your characters sit around and they plan what to do. That's how you do it. Blades obviously doesn't work that way. If you're familiar with the game, you know that this is one of its core ideas is the way it treats glossing over things. And Fangorn's question is especially interesting because he's talking about fiction first gaming, which all of role-playing fits into. It's become a popular term in certain circles as like a kind of niche thing, like this is a fiction first game and this one isn't, or whatever. When it comes to tabletop role-playing games, I think almost by definition, by necessity, in some sense, they are fiction first. That's a separate sort of rant. So I'll just try to focus on Fangorn's question here. And what he or she means, I think, is that like normally based on the fiction, you trigger a mechanic, and usually not the other way around. That's what the fiction first kind of refers to. And how does that relate to planning in Blades in the Dark? Is the planning technique in Blades fiction first or not? Again, this is one of those kind of like borderline dogma questions, like, are you properly upholding the pure holy truth of fiction first gaming, or is this a failure point in the game where you no longer have a pure fiction first experience, and shouldn't you try to be more pure or whatever? And that's all nonsense. Fiction first gaming describes role playing. It describes tabletop role playing. I don't think it's useful to necessarily, as a game designer, it can be useful to sort of diagnose your game, but as a player, I don't think it's very useful really to get very dogmatic about that, because what actually happens is, even if something's fiction first, you do fiction, then you use a mechanic, and then fiction comes out of that. So once you go down the chain a few steps, it started with the fiction and a mechanic was engaged, and that gave you new fiction. What does that mean? This fiction is mechanics first because it came out of this role? And if it is, who cares? Like, what matters is that what we say about the fiction informs the mechanics, and then the mechanics have outcomes which change the new fiction, and those inform the mechanics, and so on and so on and so on. And we don't, for example, in tabletop role-playing at least, we don't take turns, like we're playing Catan, let's say, where on my turn, I get to do these actions, and I place whatever, and I trade for this, and that's mechanics first, because none of what I do depends on the fiction that we're establishing. It can, if we play Monopoly and we role play, and I say, oh, I'm not doing that deal with you because you were engaged to my character's daughter and you left her at the altar, so I'm not going to do a real estate trade with you, then we're turning Monopoly into a tabletop RPG, a fiction-based kind of game. But in Blades, the planning mechanism or technique, I don't know if you would call it a mechanic exactly, but it's a way of taking all the fiction that leads up to a score, all the in-character discussion and interesting decision making that happens before planning the operation. And the important in-character so-called fiction first elements would be who are our enemies and who are our allies. Which enemies do we want to destroy? Which enemies do we want to win over and have as friends? Which allies do we want to betray? Which allies are we going to defend, even if it hurts us? All of these are interesting questions. And that can be a 2-hour discussion if you want it to be, because that's role-playing. Like, we're going to play our characters and we're going to advocate for their interests, and we're going to decide what our crew is about and what they really believe. And, are they just violent a-holes? Do they have any values or not? Or those are all very interesting, engaging, dynamic role play questions. And all the time spent at the table on those things is often completely worth it. It's very high payoff for those interactions. And it can seem similar to planning because it's your characters like talking about stuff, potential future outcomes or contingencies and that sort of thing. But it all has to do with who you are, what you believe, what you want, the direction of the crew, the reason they exist, why the characters are together. Are they going to shear apart? Are they going to get closer? This is the meat and potatoes of role-playing. So Blades has no shutdown for that. Like, you just do that. You go through all of those interesting discussions, and that can take time, and that's fine. There's no reason to shut that part down. The shutdown that happened in our last game, you can go check it out on YouTube, our last session 11, was when we switched to planning and then didn't use the planning mechanism that Blades has, and the players weren't using it. Or they started to, and then they sort of stopped. So it was my job as the GM to go, okay, you've engaged the mechanic in the same way that saying, I put my pistol up under his chin and I say, don't ever come back here again, engages the action roll mechanic, and you're commanding somebody and we make the command roll. They had switched from who are we, what are we about, what do we want to achieve as a crew, what do we believe in, who's our enemy now, who's our most important enemy. There was a lot of discussion about is RC finally going to get her way and they're going to go after Strangford, or are they going to go after an intermediary target first. And they started to switch into, let's do an assault. And RC was kind of saying like, yeah, let's do an assault. Let's just go to Strangford's house and basically hold him up and be like, look, we know your secrets. You got to play ball with us. And then Adam or someone said, well, maybe that's just more of a social thing. It's not real. We're not really attacking his manor house. We're like going to go in. And then there was like, okay, picking which plan, that's still part of the game. Maybe it is an assault. Maybe we do just kick down his door and like say, you got to talk to us. And you know why, we know your secrets. Or maybe it is a social. Maybe we get invited back to another party. And we were starting to go through that process. And then instead of just picking the plan, which is the type of thing you're doing to this target, which is the mechanic for Blades, the mechanic stopped and the hypothetical planning discussion began, where someone, I forget who said it first, but someone said, yeah, but what if he doesn't listen to us though? I mean, but what if we can't just kick down his door because he's like tier 4 or something, and that's kind of a big deal. And what if he's not dealing with that demon anymore? Then we won't have leverage over him like we think we do. And it started to turn into that quagmire of all the things that are going to be fun and interesting about doing that score is finding out those things. The reason you pick as a group of role players, not as your characters, the reason you pick Assault on the tier 4 Leviathan Hunter commander as your plan is because you think it'll be fun to find out how good his defenses are at his house for real, find out if your leverage over him really will work or not, yada, 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 yada. Taking those questions and presenting them as reasons not to do the thing is very reasonable in character, but it kills the mechanic. The mechanic is choose one of these things as players that sound fun to you. Then we cut to the opening of the operation and we play it out and see how all those questions get answered. And there's some friction there, right? Because you, as a player, you want to be smart, you want to plan ahead, you want to cover your contingencies. But, and even after all these months and months of gaming and all the time, we've all played Blades a lot, even outside this group, we forget that the game has you. It has your back. It's okay. You don't have to do that because there are flashbacks. There are friends. You can even flashback to downtime if you want to. There's stress that you can spend. There's all these mechanics that are there for you. So shooting down the idea before you go and saying that's not going to work because blah 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 blah. Instead, you go, and if the engagement roll goes bad and you're boned just as you show up to kick his door down, and whatever I say next about how you're boned because he's tier 4, the next set of mechanics kicks in and the players go, well, you know, we're not idiots. Back when we were planning off screen, the thing we didn't see, we talked about how he must have good security, and I want to do a flashback to how we scouted out his guards ahead of time, and we found their homes, and we threatened all of them ahead of time so that they won't defend Strangford in the critical moment. They're going to look the other way because we know where they all live, right? Let's do a flashback to us hunting them all down and essentially holding their families hostage. And we can be like, shit, okay, great. Or we scouted out a ghost door that happens to lead directly into his manor or whatever. Then you get the plan, you get the cool thing, the way you try to circumvent it or the neat idea as you hit obstacles and as the game says, this is a bad outcome, now you're going to face this consequence, or now you're going to have this bad, this trouble. Flashbacks get you out of that. And by trying to account for everything ahead of time, you disengage with the planning mechanic and you sabotage the flashback mechanic. So as a GM, it's part of my job to sort of push and say, okay, but do you guys still want to play Blades in the Dark, though? Because if you don't, I can't make you do it. We could just quit the game, or we can just sort of play a game that's adjacent to Blades in the Dark, which might be okay with us. But I have to at least bring up the idea and say, okay, whoa. If you want to keep playing Blades in the Dark, stop doing this thing you're doing now, pick a plan, and let's go to the engagement roll and see how it starts. That's what we're going to do now if we're gonna play Blades in the Dark. How does that sound? And what happens in the video is everyone goes, oh yeah, right. Yeah, we're totally not doing that. We should be doing that. And then as they adjusted, they kind of rolled all the way back out again, and we're like, you know what? Let's not even deal with Strangford right now. Let's deal with the eels first. So we're gonna do an assault plan against the eels, and then we follow the mechanics, and bang, bang, zoom. Operation was underway, and they're in the subterranean canal, and blah, 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 blah. And we're off to the races. So, yeah, so that's a very long way to answer that question, but it essentially boils down to, in terms of fiction first, the fiction that kicks off the planning mechanic is the who are we, who are our victims and who are our friends, how are we going to advance our gang's agenda next. That's all in character, in fiction stuff. Once you have the answer, you engage the mechanic, which is pick a plan and provide the detail. Then you roll the engagement. That's like the mechanic wrapped together. That generates a new set of fiction. You're at the site of the target, and you have high momentum. Everything's going well. You've discovered some problem, or everything's gone really badly, and the tables have been turned or something, and you're starting out in a battle. And now new fiction. So fiction mechanic. Fiction is the shape of that. The shape of that thing. Particularly with flashbacks. Probably the strongest place where flashbacks come into the game is on the bad engagement roll. That's like the best place to use them, because that's your planning. That's when we see how your crew's planning is salient to the scene at hand. It would really be lame, right, if you were watching Ocean's 11 and all of that business about how they were going to get the money out of the casino turned out not to matter, because when they actually do it, one of the explosive charges happens to crack the floor in a convenient place, and they just go out through a tunnel. And we wasted 20 minutes of the movie dealing with cop uniforms or something that didn't ever matter, right? And that's what a lot of role-playing planning comes down to. It's contingency, contingency, contingency. What about this? What if this happens? What if this happens? What if this happens? What if this happens? We have to cover every single one of them. And then none of them come up, or one of them comes up, or everyone gets so bullied by the least daring player who's saying, that won't work because of this, that won't work because of this, and that won't work because of this, as if he's played everything out ahead of time. And then, okay, well, I guess we won't do that. And it's like, wait a minute, what about the gaming? It's like, if you imagine doing that for every turn of combat in 3rd or 5th edition D&D now, before you resolve every turn of combat, you go, well, maybe people play this way, I don't know, but I could hit the goblin, or I could hit the shaman. I'm like, well, if you hit the shaman, then it's probably not going to work because his AC is a little higher. So, but the goblin, he's a little further away, so you're not going to have to get to use your extra action to do the thing, and plan, instead of, oh, I rolled a 17, I hit him. No, I guess we don't have to deal with all the other 1,000 possible things that could have happened, because I just fucking I rolled the hit. And that's how Blades is too. It's, sure, we can, if you really want to, I will be happy to tell you exactly why you as a crew will never get out of tier 0. It's hopeless. Forget about it. If all we're going to do is talk about it, then yeah, every single thing that you say as a hypothetical way out of your dire situation, I can give you a hypothetical thing that shuts that down completely, and it'll never work. And we can just sit there and stare at each other. So yeah, so that's why the planning mechanic works the way it does. It is in a sense a stick to pummel the game group with, because people are very, very, very happy to blather on about all the ways that they can imagine something not working, and it's just a huge waste of time. So that's the way my game works in a nutshell. But when it comes to planning, does that make sense with the fiction first thing? I hope I answered that aspect of it. Anyway, there was another question while I was answering that one. And Fengwarn, let me know if that answered your question. I kind of ranted a little bit there, as I often do. Captain Heigalak is commenting about Burning Wheel, Adam's topic today. That Burning Wheel is terrifying to get it to the table, but it's really interesting. I would say I hear this a lot. This is sort of like common knowledge in gaming circles, like, oh, Burning Wheel's really hard. I guess, I mean, it depends on where you come from. Like, Burning Wheel is really simple compared to like very difficult tabletop games. Not There aren't a lot of RPGs that are sort of more complicated than Burning Wheel, but they do exist, or they did. A lot of them are out of print now, I guess. But in general, there are plenty of tabletop games that are actually really, really complicated. I used to play Starfleet Battles, so just yeah. And it depends on where you've come from, right? Like, my background and your background are different, and our thresholds for things are going to be different, and I can't be like, oh, come on, just suck it up, it's not that hard. But in a sense, I do want to say that about Burning Wheel. It has this reputation, but the game, like, it tells you how to do it. It says, look, there's a lot of mechanics in this game. For God's sake, don't use all of them when you first start playing. Use one mechanic. Just make tests. Roll, and it tells you what obs to make stuff for the GM. And that's all you have to use. You don't have to use fight, range and cover, duel of wits, resources to whatever. You don't have to use any of that. That's why it's called the wheel. It's the hub and the spokes and the rim. Follow the rules. Start small, build as you go. Keep it really simple. Burning Wheel's core mechanic is very, very simple. The way you roll a test, and just start there. Be very simple. Start with not a lot of life paths, so you don't have to deal with 6 life path characters and all that nonsense that goes along with them. Just follow what the book says. Start really small and build over time. Don't try to eat the whole pie in one bite. And also, Burning Wheel, I've talked to Luke about this a lot. There are games that are made to reward skill. So over time, as you get better at playing Burning Wheel, you can add stuff to it, and that's your reward. You get to have more mechanics. You get to have a richer experience. It's not meant to be a game that's got a very low skill ceiling. It has a very high skill ceiling. So you can it's like poker or something, like you can play Burning Wheel forever and just keep getting better and better at it. And more, like, for me, I've played a lot of Burning Wheel, and I still, when it comes range and cover, I'm pretty good at. Fight, for whatever reason, I just have like the way I want fight to work is not the way it does work. And so I'm always like having to remind myself, like, oh, you can't, that's not how the game does that. So I have to always, so my skill as a player using the fight system still has to level up, and that's great. I enjoy that. So if you don't enjoy that, then you just don't have to use fight at all. Just never use it. Just do bloody verses or whatever. So yeah, that's my advice. It can seem really complicated. Just start small. Also, a question about hacking blades. What would you consider the absolute core of the game that you cannot hack away without losing? What makes the system great? Adam and I have a video all about this. It's on Adam's channel and my channel, I think, too. Scroll back through Adam's videos and you'll find it about hacking Burning Wheel. Or hacking Blades in the Dark, rather. We have a whole long discussion about it, and we specifically go over that topic about what the core of the game is. And then we go through like little how-tos about how to hack the game and case studies and everything. So that video will cover all of that. I can't remember what Adam called it. I think it's just called Hacking Blades in the Dark or something like that. Fake Alex Blue is asking, how does Blades in the Dark reward player skill or system mastery? Yeah, it does. Probably the best way it rewards system mastery is in synergies, like special ability synergies across crew and PC and within PC abilities. That one is significant because at first when you look at the special abilities, when you don't know the game very well, it's just like, oh, this gives me blah, blah, blah mechanic thing. I don't know really what that means exactly. So you're kind of picking abilities because they sound neat. And then over time you learn the mechanics better, and then you're better able to make like smarter choices for special abilities. And then the third tier is kind of like, oh wait, but if I have tenacious and resilient and vengeful, then I can all not resist harm, save my stress, take the damage, knock it down, use my special armor, get a bonus die on my next attack, you know, like that kind of like synergistic stuff, which a lot of games have. And also in terms of system mastery, there's a little bit of Burning Wheel thing there where you sometimes want to aim not for the top, like the way advancement works in Burning Wheel. If you always position your character fictionally so they have very easy tests, it's hard to advance. In Burning Wheel, you need difficult and challenging tests. So if you're always like mitigating all these factors in the fiction, so like, oh, actually, I can get everything done that I want to get done with a bunch of easy rolls. That's its own reward, essentially. If you want to advance and get XP, you have to like face tougher challenges, and the advancement in Blades kind of works the same way. A lot of the triggers for getting XP have to do with overreaching or pushing yourself with your drives or issues, making desperate rolls, that sort of stuff. So I've seen players go through that cycle where they start out like, oh, I need to position myself to have controlled rolls all the time because then nothing bad will happen to me. And meanwhile, there's another player who's like desperate action, and they're getting all this XP. And they're like selling people out to get their fix with their vice and all this and getting XP for that. And over time, it shifts because the person who's burning out real fast is like, oh, whoa, I got to slow down. I'm going to totally burn out my character. And then the person who's being like super careful and controlled all the time is like, oh, I'm not getting any XP. And then they kind of, go the other way. So that's, I don't know if that's system mastery exactly. That's a fairly simplistic mechanic that's pretty obvious. So there aren't a lot of like really subtle things in the system of Blades, I don't think, compared to like complicated games. But yeah, using flashbacks, I guess, probably too is a thing. The more facility, more confidence you have about flashbacks, your effectiveness can go up a lot. So that's part of it too. Weakling says, I'm currently running a Blades game with a cult. How do you see that working as Blades kind of ignores backstory? Find that it's kind of difficult to transition into heists and crime. Yeah, you don't have to do heists and crime if you're a cult. You do cult stuff. The game's about doing whatever your crew's about. So do that. All that stuff happens to be illegal in Duskwall, so it's still technically crime, but yeah, you don't need to do like crime heists if you're a cult. The reason you pick cult is because you want to do cult stuff. So is that your question? Maybe you're asking a different question. That seems, maybe I'm being kind of too flippant about that. Let me know if that is actually what you're asking. I don't think Blades ignores backstory, but it doesn't. You don't have to write it ahead of time. Everyone has a backstory that you discover as you play, but you don't have to make it before you start. But there's still backstory. You just create it while you're playing instead of alone in your notebook. And yeah, if you Figure 4 is saying, yeah, my cultists, they did turn into extortionists running a protection racket. And that's fine. It's not in the quick start, but in the full game, there are rules, which you already, I'm sure, know how to do, for changing crews. So if you start as a cult and you become breakers running an extortion racket, then you just swap your sheets out and your breakers now. It's fine. There's some little mechanics if you want to, you know, get into the nitty gritty of how much of your turf can you keep and how do claims transfer and your items and resources and stuff. But it's all just like figure it out essentially. There's a little system for it, but it's not. It's like changing playbooks in Apocalypse World if you've ever played that. Yeah, and some people are saying it's easiest to run scores as thieves. That's totally true. Thieves are the obvious, easy crew to pick. But why, you know, pick the crew that you know how to play. If you're like, I don't know what a cult would ever do, let's play cultists, then maybe you've made a mistake in judgment there. Choose the thing that it excites you, and you have an idea to do that thing. We've been saying I feel like it's kind of difficult to build the fiction around the cult to get it into the scores. Oh yeah. Okay, I think I see what you're saying. Yeah. Again, I mean, that goes back to like having good judgment with your setup. Like if the players say, we want to play a cult, and you as the GM are like, I don't know how to do anything with cults. That's not something I have no ideas. You should definitely tell them that because they're making a bad choice. They shouldn't pick cults when you're writing the game because you don't know what to do. In the book, there's long tables of roll score starters for every crew. So that'll help a little bit. You can be like, well, I don't know a lot about cults, but I can just roll 2 dice and go, hey, the spirit well has been found in the neighborhood, and some kids have been playing with it and got possessed, and the spirit wardens don't know about it yet, but it's the source of arcane energy. You guys know about it. What do you do with the spirit well? That's a thing a cult might do. Let's do that. I just rolled it randomly. So that'll help. But it's not like a replacement for a GM that has ideas for arcane problems and opportunities. The table will help you along a little bit, but you know, at the end of the day, you got to run the thing that you're comfortable running and that you're excited to run. So don't get painted into a corner there. You know, just tell your group, like, I don't choose a cult. I don't know how to do that as a GM. If you don't, then that's the right way to go. But yeah, like also figure fours kind of thing, it makes sense too. Like a lot of the time you can get away with just focusing on the positive and negative faction statuses and the crew's rivals and friends. So yeah, exactly. You're the GM. You don't need to know what they want to do. That's true to some extent. They like in terms of opportunities, the players can't say, it's the Leviathan hunters have all returned recently, empty-handed. All the Leviathans are missing, and no one knows why. No one wants to say it because it's super illegal. But whatever fortune tellers or soothsayers or God worshippers can reach out to the powers that be and find out what the fuck is going on, that would be really good. But do it without the spirit wardens finding out, or maybe they'll turn a blind eye to this, or, you know, like opportunities that arise out of the world. The players can't be like, hey, this is happening. So that's something to do as a GM. But you're right in a sense that you can just go, oh, you guys are a cult. You worship She Who Slays in Darkness. What do you do? What are your occult practices? Do you ritualistically kill people? Is that your thing? Do you need to consecrate territory to the goddess? Do you need to tear down the ritual spaces of her rivals, or I don't, whatever. Like, as a GM, you can totally do that. You can be like, you guys tell me what your cult practices are, and let's see. You can go and try to do that stuff, and we'll see how it turns out. That's fine. That's fine. But I do think it's both. It's back and forth. It's give and take. If your players choose something that just doesn't excite you, tell them that you're not excited about that. I'm not saying that you were not excited about this. Just in general, like Yeah, I think it's funny because everyone has like they have their own assessment, and they often take it as universal. And that's the kind of feedback you get as a game designer, right? People, they give you playtest feedback, and they're like, well, no one's ever going to pick the Lurk. And then the other group is like, people are only ever going to play Lurks in this game because it's about thieves. I don't know why you even have other playbooks. Hawkers are really hard. I don't know how you could ever have a group of Hawkers. And the other group is like, oh man, Hawkers are the best. This is, So you come at it from different places and land in different places. And what's hard for one group is easy for another. Try to make good decisions in that setup part. Again, like, this is my job in writing the book, to like give you that golden starting the game chapter. But it boils down to, essentially what Adam was talking about today. Like, have a strong point of view as the GM when you're coming to the table. Don't be wishy-washy about it, but be open to the group and come together on something that everyone is excited to play, like the choosing the restaurant analogy that he said before, instead of like the thing that no one objects to, because that's like the most lukewarm choice. Instead, starting any role-playing game, it really boils down to like, let's figure out what everyone is really excited about and play that. And even if that's a different game or whatever. None of this grudging, like, well, I guess I'll do it. I guess I'll play the spider then, because no one else is playing it. Nope, not allowed at my table. That reaction is not allowed. If that's the place you're at, you're not welcome. And that either means we all adapt and play something different with you, so that you're like, oh my God, I'm so excited, or we play this game without you. But there's no dragging someone along, whether it's the GM or a player or anything. It's okay if it's sort of like moderate enthusiasm. If it's like, well, yeah, okay, Star Wars isn't my favorite thing, but I like Wookiees. I'll play a Wookiee. That sounds fun. That's fine. It doesn't have to be like off the charts. But no foot dragging, no passive aggressive bullshit, no, lip service, like, oh yeah, fine, yeah, no, that sounds fun, sure, yeah, whatever, yeah, okay. Nope. That's just not acceptable behavior to me. Adult to adult, no. So that all trickles down to choosing your crew type and all that. Like, everyone's got to be on board, including the GM. Be excited. You're about to spend many hours of your life doing the thing, so like, get everyone to that place. And it's not as the GM, like, you have to get everyone to that place. Like, organize a meeting with your friends where the outcome is, oh my God, we're so excited to do this thing now. And that there's a way to do it within the game. Like, once the pitch has been done and everyone's like, oh, Blades in the Dark sounds really fun, the game sort of assumes that part of it, and it tells you how to pitch it and that kind of stuff. But starting the game assumes the pitch was a success, and you really got to watch for that. That's another like death to RPGs, when you pitch it and there's the one person who's like, okay, fine, because it's your game group, and like, that's the only way they get to play a role-playing game. So, okay, fine, yeah, I'll play Shadowrun, sure, fine. I know some people that play that way and are like, this is our group, and what we do is we play with these people over and over again, and that's our only option. I don't play that way. I tend to play. I have one group like that, but that's a long exceptional case to talk about. But it's a little bit more like, you know, a game night is, we're going to play this game. A lot of us are excited to play this game. If you're not excited to play, for heaven's sake, don't play, because you're just going to be miserable, and it's not going to be fun for everyone else. So please don't. That's how I like to do it anyway. But yeah, fake Alex Blue, the beer and pretzel social type play, totally valid. And there are lots of games made for that, including some role-playing games, where your input can be very minimal, your engagement can be very minimal, you can hang out with your friends and have a good time, and the thing you're doing is sort of this excuse to hang out, a nice little like interruption to just otherwise having a party, which is also a fine thing to do. But yeah, we can just play Bang, or we can play like a tabletop battle game of some kind, or play a fighting game on the console. Or there's a lot of like very light engagement things where, yeah, if you're not super excited about it, who cares? Like, we're all just going to hang around and have a good time, and that's fine. But there's a category of games in board games and video games and tabletop RPGs that ask a lot. They want the player to bring a lot to the table. And so foot dragging, passive aggressive lip service bullshit is toxic to that experience. You just can't. It's gonna poison what everyone else is doing. So if you just want to be casual, hang out, have fun, play a game where that is what's going to happen. Same thing with watching movies or anything, you know, like, hey, let's watch the new Fast and Furious movie and laugh and have a good time and make fun of it. It'll be great. Versus let's watch the Decalogue. You know, that you can't say come over for movie night and just have that be like this generic activity. No. If you're trying to watch the Decalogue and someone is saying they're going, this is boring, like, that's just, why are they there? They're just ruining it for everybody. So anyway, blah, blah, blah. Social dynamics, that's what we always talk about. There's some more questions back here. How do you think of a quick start document as fitting into the design process? Is it marketing, a playtest, or something else? Good question, Alex. I don't think that there's a particular answer. It's definitely marketing. Everything is marketing, pretty much. A playtest, yeah, it can be a playtest also. I guess I can talk about my design process. I don't think I would necessarily tell another designer like this is how your quick start fits into your process. Maybe I would. For me, it is a necessary. It's a thing I need to make at the beginning. It's usually the first, not the very first. Character sheets are the first thing I'd make, but a quick start, maybe not a laid out quick start, but a quick start is how I start designing a game. Because for me, there have been a couple exceptions, but 99% of the games I've made the first thing that happens is running the game for a group. That's the first thing I do in the design process. So, and that might sound a little weird because it's like, what do you run if you haven't designed anything yet? So there, like, obviously there's a little bit of design thought that's gone into it. But just a tiny amount. I usually run a session as the kickoff thing for working on the game, and so I think like, well, okay, what do I need to run the game tonight? When it was something like World of Dungeons, like I don't need character sheets. I need a list of class abilities would be good because I'm going to ask them to pick them. And if I just list them all out off the top of my head here, it's going to be very hard for them to choose because they're not going to remember the 12 things I said. So I should make a sheet that has all of those. And it's like kind of equipment, so they need an equipment list. Because again, like it'll be really annoying if I have to say like all of them out loud. So I should make a list of those, and then we can pretty much play. So there's like a minimum amount of stuff you need to play, and then second session, maybe first session, I have character sheets depending on the game. With Blades, I always had character sheets because there was always this like picking process that you had to do when you make a character, and it wasn't really succinct enough to just tell them the choices. So there had to be sheets. And then from there, it only takes a couple more sessions to like round out what's needed for a quick start. And then there you have it. Like Lady Blackbird, that's where that came from. If you've played that game, that was a one evening experience. I started, I don't know, it was around noon that day at the office. I didn't have anything to do, so I made all the characters for Lady Blackbird, and then we played. 5 hours later, we played, and then that night I revised the sheets and then posted it on the forum the next day. So that's generally how my games start and then evolve, and sometimes that's the end. The quick start is the whole game, and then it's over. But then with something like Blades, we ended up playing it for a couple years, and so it developed and developed and developed, and grew into needing to be a book instead of a quick start. Depending on how you look at it, thousands of people play the game now using the quick start. So the book is nice to have for those people. I'm sure they'll enjoy it, but it will mostly be for people who look at a quick start document and just kind of go, I don't know. I need to read a book. I won't get it. It'll mostly be for them. I don't think you need to have it to play Blades in the Dark, the whole book. But as a document about Blades in the Dark and about role playing, the book to me is more about the ongoing conversation about what role playing games are and how they're done. The quick start fits in a little bit more into the status quo of gamers that already get it or are already have played the games that inform Blades in the Dark and are ready to receive it. The common knowledge is shared, so they can, what they do instinctually is going to fit Blades pretty well. The book is, it fits into the canon essentially. So if you haven't played Talislanta and Burning Wheel and Apocalypse World, and The Shadow of Yesterday, you can just take down the Blades in the Dark book and hopefully play with that stuff, infused into your play. And also, I have a lot of stuff to say on the topic of, how to coordinate starting a game series and how to deal with player versus player. And that stuff is in the game of Blades in the Dark, but it's also in the cloud of surrounding techniques that those mechanics touch. So I kind of knew, if the Kickstarter did really well, I can say more about this stuff, and I can write a bigger book about it and kind of like really try to impart a bunch of best practices and that sort of thing. So yeah, so to answer your question, the quick start is marketing. It's my starting point for design, because I have to run the game as my first sort of design act, and then it becomes a sort of living document over the life of the thing. It expands, and there is a place for me where it is like a playtest. It's not really much of a mechanics playtest, although people will give feedback, and that's good. But it is a playtest of it's a usability test of the sheets and stuff. How much stuff should be on a sheet? How many reference sheets do you need? Should all the little mechanical things be on the character sheet at the bottom where it tells you the different plans and things? Is that just clutter? So yeah, it's usability playtesting for sure. That is a big factor. All right, cool. Thanks, guys. It's about time for Adam to dive into the deep abyss of Campaign Cartographer. I think that will be fun to watch. So, adios. Thanks for asking questions. Thanks for listening in, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.